Okay, so up to now, we have been building websites that are kind of plain and blah, right? They're just white, black text, nothing exciting. So HTML is providing us with the structure. It gives us the paragraphs and the structure of how our web page is going to look, but it doesn't give us color and decoration. And that's what CSS is. So we are going to start learning about CSS and learn that CSS is the language we use to style an HTML document. So it describes how the element should be displayed. It's going to give it the color and the design and the decoration and all of that. So we're going to jump into CSS in this video. Before I get started then, I need to create a project that I'm going to use to demonstrate CSS. So I'll start there. Remember that we had a CIS 130 folder. And in that 130 folder, we created a project called Recipes where we did our hyperlinks and our lists and that sort of thing. So today I'm going to create a new project folder. So I'm going to do it a little bit differently than the way we've done it before, just so you can see different directions to get to the same outcome. So in my CIS 130 folder, I'm going to create a new folder. So a new project, and I'm going to call this project Intro to CSS. Notice that I am not using any spacing. You really want to get out of spacing when it comes to web development. So instead of creating spaces, I've created capital letters to differentiate the three words involved in Intro to CSS. All right, so now that I've created that folder, what I want to do is I gave you some images to download if you want to use those in this project. So in my downloads folder, there's the images that I provided for you. So I'm going to double click on that and I'm going to extract those images, and it extracted, into a window that I can't show over here. So let me pull it over. So I'm going to extract those, and that should extract them all back into my downloads folder. There we go. So I'm going to copy that, or cut it, whatever you want to do. Copy that into the Intro to CSS project that we just created. So paste that in there. All right, so now that I have my project in place and I created it in place here in my File Explorer, I can open up that project here in Visual Studio Code, File. Remember, I'm opening in a folder, not a file, so I need to open up that entire project. So I'm going to navigate to my desktop, to CIS 130, navigate to that folder that I'm creating, and select folder. Excellent. So now in this folder, I need to create some index pages. And then I also have a folder called Images that is storing my images. All right, so now we're going to create two pages. We're going to create index page as always, which will be our home page. So I'll start with that. So again, I have selected this entire root folder, and I can tell because the blue rectangle is around everything as opposed to selecting just the image folder. Now the blue rectangle is around images. So if I create a file now, it'll be put into the image folder, but I want to create a file inside my Intro to CSS folder. So I've selected the entire folder. Now I'm going to click on New File and create the index.html. I'm going to do the exclamation point and tab to create the initial skeleton for my web page. And then in the content, I've given you code that you can copy and paste in. So I'm going to copy and paste in that code. I'm going to go grab it, copy, and then paste it in here. If it didn't align correctly, if everything is indented weird, remember that you can right click on the page and choose Format Document, which will make sure all your indenting looks correct. All right, and so now I'm going to create, let's see what we have here. So we have some anchor tags, some hyperlinks that are creating a link to an index.html page, which is this one. And it looks like I've also wanting to create a stitch.html page. So we're going to create that. We've got a heading, we've got an image, and that image is stored in a folder. So we want to make sure we acknowledge the folder name and that image. And then you probably want to put your own name in there. Then I have this special encoding for the copyright symbol. So in the past, just kind of a remembrance, we installed a extension that enabled us to right click and choose Open in Default Browser. And that worked pretty cool, but then we had to continually refresh the page every time we made a change. So I'm going to give you a different extension if you want to play around with it. So under extensions, if you want to click on something called Live Server, I think mine's already installed, but if you want to click on this one and go ahead and install Live Server, this is really a neat extension because what it'll do once you install it is when I right click on index.html now, and I say, I have this option now that says open with Live Server. What that'll do is it'll open up a web page for me, and it did it in the other monitor. So let me pull that over here. And what's really neat about this one is that if I make a change, so if I make a change here, I'm going to change characters of Hawaii to characters from Hawaii, maybe, without doing anything. I don't have to refresh the page. It should already refresh itself. See how it made the change? I didn't have to come in here and refresh it. Live Server is always paying attention to changes and will automatically refresh my page for me. So that makes things a little bit easier. So I'm going to use Live Server for my example here during this video so I don't have to keep coming over here and refreshing the page. All right, so now I'm going to create that stitch page. So I'm going to, again, highlight the entire folder, the root folder as we're going to call it. I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call it stitch.html. And I think the easiest way to do it is just copy all of this code over because it's going to look very similar, and paste it here. And now just make the appropriate changes for stitch. So remember, the navigation should be the same on all pages. So I'm not going to change this because I'm on this stitch page or I'm on the index page. Now I'm going to change the image to stitch, which is right there, stitch.png. And this is an image of stitch. And the rest of this should be the same. So let me click on this link to the stitch page. There's the stitch page. So again, and there we go. All right, so now I'm set up. So now that I'm set up, let's talk about what CSS is and start applying it to our newly created website. All right, so now let's apply some style to our stitch page. Okay, so I'm going to go back to W3 Schools. And this time I'm going to go to References and I'm going to go down to CSS Reference. So in CSS Reference, here are all of the ways that we can style our, we use CSS to make all of our styling. And I'm going to make this make more sense as I progress here. But for the moment, as I kind of build up on this idea, I want to go to font style. So I'm going to start here and I'm going to explain these things as we go, especially this stuff. We're going to get to it, but we're going to do the simple part and then work our way up to the more complex parts. So font style is a way to specify the font style for a text. So for example, this will give us the ability to see how we say font style, colon, and then these are our choices. So this is how we can create a font to look italic or other options here. And I'm going to go back and click on try it just so you can kind of see that was not where I intended it to go. That's not where I thought it was going to go. So this is maybe where I wanted to go. There we go. So this is what I meant to do. I wanted you to see that we can, with this syntax, font style, which is provided to us by CSS language, colon, and then the option, whether it be normal, italic, or oblique, is going to change our font. So font normal is the default. That's what it would look like if we didn't apply a font style. Font style italic has a little bit of italics in it, and font style oblique sure looks very similar. So let's just go with font style italic. So we're going to start off with this CSS for our very first styling. All right, so I'm going to put up my document because Live Server is on, and we're going to apply an italic to 2023. So the way there's many ways, 3 different ways that we can apply CSS. And the first is called inline style. So I'm going to do a control/key. That's the key underneath that shares with the question mark. And there's my comment block. And I'm going to let you know that this is an inline. This is called an inline CSS block. See, inline CSS. An inline CSS means that I'm going to apply some CSS styling to just this paragraph. So inside the paragraph, inside the open and close angle brackets, after the P word, the P letter, I'm going to type in the word style, because CSS is a styling, equals, and then it automatically puts the quotations in there for me. So you can see the quotations and the cursor in there. You need the quotations. And then we're going to put this thing that we just saw here. So we're going to put in font style. Oh, I need a dash, not a zero. Font style. And then it shows a colon, and then it shows italic, and then it shows a semicolon. So I'm copying the CSS styling, and this is the value. So we have font style, and then what font style we want to apply. In this case, we're applying normal. And what you should see now is that our paragraph went to italics. So we call this inline, where we put the CSS styling inside the paragraph or inside the element that we want to apply it to. So for example, I could have also put it or instead of or also put it here in the H2 tag. And now you'll see that the H2 tag goes to italics. All right, so where that works, but at the same time, it can be pretty cumbersome if we want to apply italics to more than one thing on this page or to multiple things. So the next thing we're going to learn is that inline style is just kind of a one-time deal, right? But we might want to apply some kind of styling to the entire page. And so there is a different way to do CS styling, and that is an embedded style. So I'm going to put my comment block here, and I'm going to CSS, and this is an embedded style. Embedded, I don't know how to spell it, styling. And let's look and see how we do that. So for that conversation, I'm going to go back to W3 Schools, and we're going to go back to, let's see, tutorials, learn CSS again. And I'm going to go down here to CSS syntax so I can show you what it looks like, and then we're going to apply it to our web page. So CSS syntax looks like this. You have what you call your selector. And the selector is any of your HTML tags. For example, your H1, or it could have been the paragraph, or the image, IMG, or H3. So any of our HTML tags is your selector. And that's exactly what it's doing. It's selecting that thing to apply a style to. So here we applied a style just to this specific one and only paragraph. But maybe instead what we want to do is apply a style to all of the things, all of the paragraphs on the page, or all of the H1s on the page. So this is more general in selection, right? It selects more than a specific one. And the syntax then is your selector, open and close curly braces. Then just like we saw with the font style, we're going to put in a property, and we'll look at properties in a minute. In this case, the property was font style. And then the value. And in our case, the value was italics. So in this scenario, they're changing the font color to blue and the font size to 12 pixels. So this is the syntax that we're going to follow. Selector, curly brace, property name, colon, and the value, semicolon, and then we can apply more than one style. So let's see how that works. All right, so what I'm going to do is take you back to references, and we're going to go back to CSS reference. And then the word properties is what we see here. So in our syntax, properties, this is what we just saw was color. So I'm going to scroll down to these are all the properties, all the things we can change. And so just now we saw color, and then there was a color value. So you can see here that there is the selector. Now they're selecting the entire body, and then some curly braces, the property, which is color, and then the value, which is red. And so we see it being applied to several things here. So let's apply this body idea. We'll apply this concept to our web page and change the background of our web page. So just kind of a side note, let's look at this. So I'm going to look at this color picker. I'm going to click on that and give you this idea that there is more than one way to represent a color on a web page. And this gives us a visual of that. So for example, in this color picker, they have this red value chosen. And so when you are creating color definitions in your web page, you can use the word red, which will come out red. You can use the hex value, which is basically red, green, and blue. You can also demonstrate red, green, and blue with this syntax, RGB 255. By the way, this is the hex value for 255. This is the hex value for 0, and this is the hex value for blue. Or you can use, this value is used more in printing, like when you're printing out documents or flyers and that kind of a thing, but it's still valid. So there's more than one way to represent colors, and you can see that demonstrated here in this color picker. If you look at some of the colors in the color picker, for example, let's say, I don't know if I can get lucky here. So in this particular case, this particular color is not represented with an English word. So we only have 3 choices for this color. So we have a limited number of colors that we can represent with words. Otherwise, we use hex values, RGB, or this HSL value. So that being said, let's go back to this idea of color. I can get back there. And let's apply some color. You can see here the different values, right? So red, okay, RGB, or the hex value. All right, so let's apply a body background color to our HTML page. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to, in the head tag, remember the head tag is what provides information to the browser so it knows how to display or render our page. Well, one thing we want to tell it is how to style our page. And so we're going to use the HTML style tag inside the head tag to define or tell the browser how to decorate or style our page using CSS. So using this same syntax then, we're going to choose body and then open and close curly brace. And this is actually, and I didn't think about this as I was talking, this is changing the text color. But what I really want to do is change the background color. So this is the font color. We can change that just to see it. But what I want to change is the background color. So if I come up here, there is a property called background color, and that will enable me to change the background color to whatever we wanted to do. In this case, they did it to coral. So these are our properties, and in our properties, we can find our values. So we can do both. I'm going to put up my page so I can see the live version of it, so I can see it changing as I type. So I'm in the stitch page, and I'm in the body tag, and I'm going to change the background color. And you can see that Visual Studio Code is trying to help me out. It's saying sets the background color. Is this the one you meant? Yep. And then it does give you some of the English words, so that makes that easy if that helps. So I'm just going to click on beige. And then as it saves, now we've got this beige background. Okay. So if you wanted to try a different color, we can try that. Notice that we have the semicolon at the end of this particular style rule. If you did not put the semicolon on it and we added another rule like color, I'm going to do color just so we can see it. I think it said red, so we can see that. Notice that I'm getting an error. Our validation will also validate CSS. So it should show us that this document is not valid, and we're even seeing that right here. So this is validating both our CSS as well as our HTML, which is very handy. So let's see. So it doesn't like color red. Let's see. It says missing a semicolon before the property name color. So it recognizes that the style before it doesn't have a semicolon. So let's add that. And now you're going to see the red coloring. We still have an error. What is the error? Missing a semicolon before the property name. I think it just didn't clear itself out because there we go. Didn't clear itself out. All right. So I wasn't really interested in the color red, so I'm going to erase that. If you want to keep yours, that's fine. There is another, I'm just going to start giving you different properties that you can certainly look up here in W3 Schools. Remember that there's all kinds of properties here, and I'm going to use text align, and I'm going to do text align center. And let's see what text align center does. Oh my goodness. So text align center is taking all of that text, everything on the page, everything that's inside the open and close body tag, and centering it. That's handy. All right. Okay, let's try some things that we haven't seen before. I am wanting to style these anchor tags because they look kind of plain. Those are the defaults, so let's make some changes. So I'm going to select the anchor tag. So remember, a selector is just any of our HTML tags. There's my selector, open and close curly brace, and I'm going to use something called text decoration. Text decoration, and I'm going to use none. And what that'll do is it takes away the underlining from my links. Okay. All right. Something else that's kind of cool and unique is we have different, what we call states, different moments in time of an anchor tag. Here's what I mean. We've already seen that the color changes depending on if this anchor tag is visited or unvisited. So we have the ability to put different colors on different states of those anchor tags. There's only one state of the H1. It's always going to be an H1, but this has different colors depending on if it's visited or unvisited, or even if it is hovered. So let's do that. We're going to apply some states. So A : visited. So that colon represents a state. So I'm saying if this state has been visited, if the anchor tag has been visited, we're going to make the color green. And so you see that both of these have been visited, so they're both green. So now we have the ability to apply a state to just to the anchor tags. There's no state for body and there's no state for an H3, but an anchor tag is kind of unique because it has that extra property. So colon and state. All right, so let's also try one just for fun of an A : and the state being hover. And so if we have an hover, let's do a background color of yellow. Let's just see how that works. All right, so now I can put my cursor over and you can see that it is changing color when my cursor is over it. Wow, we've done a lot in just a little here, haven't we? Let's make the font bigger. So under my anchor tag, right here, under my anchor tag, not only am I going to say text decoration none, let's change the font size. So let's say the font size is going to be 25 pixels. Let's try that. And so now we see the font is bigger. Now we can really see that hover. All right. So yeah, I'm kind of pulling out some random properties here, but they're all listed here in this properties as I showed you. So there's a lot of them, obviously, and I'm not going to go through every individual one here, but as I do examples, I'm just going to start introducing you to different properties, and you can always come and explore what the different values might be and or explore these different properties yourself so you can play around with different CSS properties. Obviously, I've said that like 8 different directions. I think I get the idea across. All right, so in this video, I've introduced you to CSS, and we've seen different ways to apply that CSS. We've seen that we can do it as an inline style, meaning that I'm putting that style directly in just this tag, and in this tag only is that style going to be applied. We saw that we can do a CSS style in the head tag, and that'll apply to everything on this page. So if I have more than one anchor tag on this page, and we have an anchor tag, 2 of them, both of those anchor tags are getting the styling because this is in this applies to the entire page. We saw that we can look up, the syntax was selector, and then we need to put in curly braces. So everything in the curly braces is what's going to be applied to this selector. So when we have a body, inside the curly braces, we have 2 different style rules. We have background color, which we call a property. Text align is a property. So our property goes on the left. We separate that with a colon, and the value goes on the right. And when we have more than one style rule, we separate those with semicolons. So in the next video, we'll learn how to pull that out of, I'm sure I spelled embedded wrong. That really tripped me up. There we go. really bother me. All right. And so in the next video, we'll learn how to pull these styling out and put them on a completely separate page.